Oh. Today we delve into a story that explores the delicate and often painful complexities of familial relationships. This narrative contains themes of betrayal and inappropriate behavior, but it is told with sensitivity and care. If you are ready to embark on this journey, please remember that the power of stories lies in their ability to foster empathy and understanding. Let us begin. Maplewood was the kind of town where the sun always seemed to shine a little brighter, where the streets were lined with towering oak trees and the houses stood proudly behind white picket fences. It was a place where life appeared to move at a gentle, predictable pace, a place where children rode their bikes to school, and neighbors exchanged pleasantries over perfectly manicured lawns. The Johnson family, with their two-story colonial home and meticulously maintained garden, seemed to epitomize the American dream. But as Stacy would soon discover, dreams are fragile, easily shattered by the weight of secrets and the darkness that lurks beneath the surface. The Johnsons appeared to have it all: a loving family, a beautiful home, and a life that others envied. But behind the closed doors of their home, a different reality existed. Anthony Johnson, a 42-year-old accountant, was a man of routine and precision. He left for work every morning at 7:15 a.m., his briefcase in hand, and returned at 6 p.m. sharp. He was quiet, reserved, and deeply devoted to his family, or so it seemed. Brenda, his wife, was the heart of the household. Her laughter filled the rooms, her warmth a constant presence. She was the kind of woman who baked cookies for the neighborhood kids and always had a kind word for everyone she met. Stacy, their 14-year-old daughter, was the pride of the family. She was bright, spirited, and full of life. Her room was a reflection of her personality, walls adorned with posters of her favorite bands, shelves cluttered with books and trinkets, and a desk where she spent hours sketching and dreaming of the future. She was popular at school, her laughter echoing through the hallways, her smile lighting up the room. But beneath the surface of this idyllic life, cracks were beginning to form. Anthony's quiet demeanor masked a growing restlessness, a darkness that even Brenda couldn't fully understand. He had always been a private man, but lately his moods had become unpredictable. He would retreat to his study for hours, the door locked, the sound of his pacing echoing through the house. Brenda tried to reach him to understand what was troubling him, but he would brush her off with a curt, "I'm fine." The Johnsons were the picture of suburban bliss, or so it seemed to the outside world. Anthony was a man of habit, his life a series of routines that rarely deviated. He was known in the neighborhood as a hard-working man, a dedicated husband, and a loving father. But behind closed doors, a different story unfolded. Brenda was the glue that held the family together. She was the one who made sure the house was always warm and inviting, who cooked meals that brought the family together, who listened to Stacy's stories about school and her dreams for the future. She and Stacy shared a bond that was unshakable, a connection that went beyond mother and daughter. They were confidants, allies, and best friends. But Brenda couldn't ignore the changes in Anthony. His temper was shorter, his silences longer. He would snap at her over the smallest things: a misplaced pen, a dish left in the sink. She tried to talk to him to understand what was going on, but he would shut her out, his eyes cold and distant. One evening, as Brenda was preparing dinner, she heard a crash from the study. She rushed in to find Anthony standing amidst a pile of shattered glass, his hands trembling. His eyes were filled with a mix of rage and despair, and for the first time, Brenda felt afraid. "Anthony, what's wrong?" she asked, her voice trembling. He didn't answer, instead storming out of the room and slamming the door behind him. Brenda stood there, her heart pounding, wondering what had happened to the man she had married. The days that followed were tense and uneasy. Anthony's moods continued to swing unpredictably, his anger simmering just beneath the surface. Brenda tried to maintain a sense of normalcy, but the strain was beginning to show. She found herself walking on eggshells, afraid to say or do anything that might set him off. Stacy, too, noticed the change in her father. He had always been quiet, but now he seemed distant, almost cold. He would sit at the dinner table, his eyes fixed on his plate, barely speaking a word. When he did speak, his words were sharp and cutting, leaving Stacy feeling small and insignificant. One night, as Stacy was getting ready for bed, she heard her parents arguing in the living room. Their voices were low, but the tension was palpable. She crept to the top of the stairs, her heart pounding, and listened. "You're not the man I married," Brenda said, her voice trembling with emotion. "Maybe you never really knew me," Anthony replied, his tone cold and dismissive. Stacy felt a chill run down her spine. She had never heard her parents fight like this before. She crept back to her room, her mind racing, and climbed into bed, pulling the covers up to her chin. She lay there, staring at the ceiling, wondering what was happening to her family. The tension in the house was palpable, a constant presence that weighed heavily on everyone. Brenda tried to shield Stacy from the worst of it, but she couldn't protect her from everything. She noticed the way Anthony looked at Stacy, the way his eyes lingered on her for just a moment too long. It made her uneasy, but she dismissed it as her imagination. Stacy, meanwhile, was struggling to understand the changes in her father. She missed the man who used to tuck her into bed at night and read her stories. Now he was a stranger, his behavior erratic and unpredictable. One evening, as Stacy was doing her homework, Anthony came into her room and sat on her bed. He started asking her questions about her day, but his eyes were fixed on her in a way that made her feel uncomfortable. "Dad, I'm trying to study," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, but he didn't seem to hear her, instead reaching out to brush a strand of hair from her face. Stacy froze, her heart pounding in her chest. The incidents continued, each one leaving Stacy feeling more confused and afraid. She tried to talk to her mother about it, but she didn't know how to articulate what was happening. She felt guilty, as if she were doing something wrong. Brenda noticed the change in Stacy's behavior. She seemed withdrawn, anxious, and fearful. She tried to talk to her to understand what was wrong, but Stacy would brush her off, saying she was fine. One night, as Stacy lay in bed, she heard her father's footsteps outside her door. Her heart pounded in her chest as she heard him enter her room. She pretended to be asleep, hoping he would leave, but he stood there watching her. The next morning she found him in the living room, watching an adult film with intimate scenes playing out on the screen. Her stomach churned as she realized the implications of what she was seeing. The tension in the house was unbearable, the air thick with fear and tension. Stacy's nights were filled with nightmares, her days with a constant sense of dread. One night, as she lay in bed, she heard her father's footsteps again. This time he didn't just stand and watch. He climbed into bed with her, his hands touching her in ways that made her skin crawl. Stacy's mind went blank with terror. She tried to push him away, but he was too strong. She screamed, but he covered her mouth with his hand, silencing her cries. The next morning, Stacy woke up feeling numb. She knew she had to get out to escape the nightmare her life had become. She waited until her father was asleep, then she packed a small bag and slipped out of the house. She ran to a neighbor's house, banging on the door until they answered. The look of fear and desperation on her face was enough to convince them to call the police. The police arrived and took Stacy into protective custody. They went to the house to confront Anthony, who was still asleep in his bed. He was taken into custody, his face a mask of confusion and denial. The investigation that followed was thorough and harrowing. Stacy was interviewed by Child Protection Services, her testimony providing a chilling account of the abuse she had endured. The police uncovered evidence of Anthony's deteriorating mental state, including his isolation from family and friends. Stacy's journey to recovery was not easy. She struggled with nightmares, anxiety, and depression, the trauma of her abuse leaving deep scars. But with the help of her therapist, she learned to cope with her emotions and to find strength in herself. She also found support in a local support group for survivors of domestic violence. There she met other girls who had experienced similar trauma, and she realized that she was not alone. Stacy decided to channel her pain into something meaningful. She began volunteering at a local shelter for survivors of abuse, where she found solace in helping others who had endured similar experiences. The work was emotionally taxing, but it gave her a sense of purpose and fulfillment. She also reconnected with her love for art, using painting as a way to process her emotions and express herself. Her artwork became a powerful tool for healing, and she even held a small exhibition at a local gallery, where her pieces resonated deeply with others who had faced adversity. Stacy's story is one of resilience and hope. Despite the darkness she had experienced, she found the strength to rise above it and to help others. Her journey is a testament to the power of courage, compassion, and the human spirit. Stacy's healing process was not linear. There were days when the pain felt overwhelming, when the memories of her abuse threatened to consume her. But with each passing day, she learned to manage her emotions, to find moments of peace amidst the chaos. Her therapist encouraged her to explore mindfulness and meditation, which helped her stay grounded and present. She also began journaling, documenting her thoughts and feelings as a way to process her trauma. The community rallied around Stacy, offering their support and love. Her friends, neighbors, and teachers rallied to her side, providing a network of support that helped her through the darkest days. The local church organized a fundraiser to support the shelter where Stacy volunteered, and the community came together to raise money and awareness for the cause. Stacy was overwhelmed by the outpouring of support, and she realized that she was not alone. One day, Stacy decided to share her story with the support group. She spoke about her experiences, her fears, and her hopes for the future. Her courage inspired the other girls, and they began to open up about their own experiences. Stacy found a sense of purpose in helping others, and she realized that she could use her experience to make a difference. Stacy's advocacy work began to gain traction. She started speaking at local schools and community events, sharing her story and raising awareness about the signs of abuse. Her message resonated with many, and she became a beacon of hope for survivors. Her efforts led to the creation of a local task force aimed at preventing domestic violence and supporting survivors. The task force worked closely with schools, law enforcement, and community organizations to create safer spaces for those in need. Running the task force was not without its challenges. Stacy faced many obstacles from fundraising to managing volunteers. But she was determined to make a difference, and she refused to give up. She learned to delegate tasks, to trust her team, and to ask for help when she needed it. She also learned to take care of herself, to find balance between her work and her personal life. The impact of Stacy's advocacy work was profound. The task force provided counseling, support, and resources to hundreds of survivors, helping them to heal and to find hope for the future. Stacy's work had a ripple effect, inspiring others to get involved and to support the cause. The community came together to support the task force, and the organization continued to grow and thrive. Stacy struggled with the idea of forgiving her father. She knew that he had suffered from mental illness, but the pain he had caused her was deep and lasting. Her therapist encouraged her to explore the idea of forgiveness, not for his sake but for her own. She realized that forgiving him didn't mean forgetting what he had done, but it meant letting go of the anger and the pain. Stacy's story is one of hope and redemption. Despite the darkness she had experienced, she found the strength to rise above it and to help others. Her work with the task force gave her a sense of purpose and fulfillment. She realized that she could use her experience to make a difference, to help other girls who had experienced similar trauma. The legacy of Stacy's advocacy work is one of compassion, resilience, and hope. The task force continues to provide support and resources to survivors, and it has become a beacon of hope for many. Stacy's story has inspired many, and her work has touched countless lives. She has become a role model for other survivors, showing them that it is possible to heal and to find hope. Stacy's journey is far from over. She continues to work with the task force, and she is committed to making a difference in the lives of others. She has also started to explore new opportunities, including writing a book about her experiences. She hopes to share her story with a wider audience, to inspire others to find hope and healing. As Stacy delves deeper into her healing journey, she begins to uncover more about her father's past. Through conversations with extended family and old friends, she learns that Anthony had a troubled childhood, marked by neglect and abuse. This revelation doesn't excuse his actions, but it helps Stacy understand the cycle of pain that led to her own suffering. She grapples with the idea of generational trauma and how it can perpetuate cycles of abuse. This newfound understanding fuels her passion for breaking these cycles through her advocacy work. Stacy's therapist encourages her to embrace vulnerability as a source of strength. She begins to share her story more openly, not just in support groups but also in public forums. Her courage inspires others to speak out, and she becomes a vocal advocate for survivors of abuse. Her vulnerability also deepens her relationships with those around her. She forms a close bond with a fellow survivor, Mia, who becomes a trusted friend and confidant. Together, they navigate the complexities of healing and rebuilding their lives. Stacy's advocacy work begins to gain national attention. She is invited to speak at conferences and on television, sharing her story and the mission of the task force. Her message resonates with countless people and donations pour in, allowing the organization to expand its reach. The ripple effect of her work is felt far and wide. Schools begin implementing programs to educate students about healthy relationships and the warning signs of abuse. Communities come together to create safer spaces for survivors. As the task force grows, so does the weight of Stacy's responsibilities. She struggles with the pressure of being a public figure and the emotional toll of constantly revisiting her trauma. There are moments when she feels overwhelmed and questions whether she can continue. But with the support of her team and the encouragement of those she has helped, Stacy finds the strength to persevere. She learns to set boundaries and prioritize self-care, understanding that she can't pour from an empty cup. Stacy's journey comes full circle as she reflects on how far she has come. She visits Maplewood for the first time since leaving, standing outside her childhood home. The memories are painful, but she no longer feels trapped by them. She realizes that the darkness she endured has given her a unique ability to see the light in others. Her story is no longer just about survival. It's about transformation and the power of hope. Stacy's book, Veil of Shadows, is published and becomes a bestseller. Readers from all walks of life are moved by her story, and she receives countless letters from survivors who have found hope and strength in her words. The task force continues to thrive, with new chapters opening across the country. Stacy's legacy is one of resilience, compassion, and the unwavering belief that no one should have to face their darkest moments alone. Stacy stands at the edge of a new chapter in her life. She has found love, built a family of her own, and continues to inspire others through her work. The shadows of her past no longer define her. Instead, they serve as a reminder of how far she has come. As she looks to the future, Stacy knows that there will always be challenges, but she also knows that she has the strength to face them. Her story is a testament to the power of the human spirit and the enduring light of hope. The sun rises over Maplewood, casting a golden glow over the town. The streets are quiet, the houses still. But within the hearts of those who have been touched by Stacy's story, there is a sense of hope and renewal. The veil of shadows has been lifted, and the light shines brighter than ever before. Stacy and Mia had been inseparable since middle school. They met in art class where Mia's bold abstract paintings contrasted with Stacy's delicate sketches. Despite their different styles, they bonded over their shared love of creativity and their ability to see the world through a unique lens. Mia was the kind of friend who could make Stacy laugh even on her darkest days, and Stacy was the one who always knew how to calm Mia's restless spirit. But beneath Mia's vibrant exterior lay a secret she had never shared with anyone, not even Stacy. Mia's home life was far from perfect. Her father, a former soldier, struggled with PTSD, and his unpredictable moods cast a shadow over their household. Mia's mother, a nurse, worked long hours to support the family, leaving Mia to navigate the chaos on her own. When Stacy opened up about her own trauma, Mia felt a surge of guilt for never sharing her story. But the weight of her secret was too heavy to bear, and she feared that revealing the truth would change the way Stacy saw her. One night, after a particularly violent argument between her parents, Mia fled the house and showed up on Stacy's doorstep, her face streaked with tears. Stacy didn't ask questions. She simply pulled Mia into a hug and led her inside. That night, as they sat on the floor of Stacy's room, Mia finally opened up about the turmoil at home. "I don't know how much longer I can do this," Mia confessed, her voice trembling. "It's like walking on eggshells all the time. One minute he's fine and the next, it's like he's a completely different person." Stacy listened quietly, her heart breaking for her friend. She recognized the pain in Mia's eyes. It was the same pain she had seen in her own reflection for so long. Stacy and Mia began to lean on each other in ways they never had before. They spent hours talking about their fears, their dreams, and the things they wished they could change. Stacy encouraged Mia to seek help just as she had done, but Mia was hesitant. She didn't want to betray her family, and she worried that speaking out would only make things worse. But as the weeks passed, the situation at home grew more volatile. Mia's father's outbursts became more frequent, and Mia found herself retreating further into herself. She stopped painting, stopped laughing, stopped believing that things could ever get better. One evening, after a particularly brutal argument, Mia's father stormed out of the house, leaving Mia and her mother in stunned silence. Mia's mother, who had always been the peacekeeper, finally broke down. "I can't do this anymore," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "I can't keep pretending everything's okay." Mia felt a surge of anger, not at her mother but at the situation they were in. For the first time, she allowed herself to consider the possibility of leaving. But the thought of abandoning her mother filled her with guilt, and she didn't know where to begin. Stacy, who had been quietly supporting Mia from the sidelines, decided it was time to intervene. She introduced Mia to her therapist, Dr. Patel, who specialized in trauma and family dynamics. At first, Mia was resistant, but after a few sessions she began to open up. Dr. Patel helped Mia understand that her father's behavior was not her fault, and that she had the right to prioritize her own safety and well-being. She also encouraged Mia to reconnect with her love of art, which had always been a source of solace for her. Mia's journey to healing was not easy. She struggled with feelings of guilt and shame, and there were days when the weight of her trauma felt unbearable. But with the support of Stacy, Dr. Patel, and a local support group for children of veterans, she began to find her footing. She started painting again, using her art as a way to process her emotions and express the things she couldn't put into words. Her work became darker and more introspective, but it was also filled with a raw, unflinching honesty that resonated with others. Mia's mother, inspired by her daughter's courage, finally made the decision to leave Mia's father. It was a difficult choice, but one that ultimately brought them closer together. They moved into a small apartment, where Mia set up a makeshift studio in the corner of her bedroom. For the first time in years, Mia felt a sense of peace. She still had bad days, but she no longer felt like she was drowning. She began to dream about the future, about going to art school, about traveling the world, about helping others who had experienced similar pain. Stacy and Mia's friendship deepened as they navigated their respective journeys of healing. They became each other's biggest cheerleaders, celebrating every small victory and offering comfort during the inevitable setbacks. Together they began to explore the idea of using their experiences to help others. They started a blog where they shared their stories, their art, and their thoughts on healing and resilience. The blog quickly gained a following, and they began to receive messages from people all over the world who had been inspired by their courage. Stacy and Mia decided to take their advocacy work a step further. They partnered with a local nonprofit that provided resources and support to survivors of domestic violence and families affected by PTSD. They began speaking at schools and community events, sharing their stories and encouraging others to seek help. Their work was emotionally taxing, but it also gave them a sense of purpose. They knew they were making a difference, and that knowledge gave them the strength to keep going. Despite their progress, both Stacy and Mia still struggled with the shadows of their past. There were nights when the memories came flooding back, leaving them feeling raw and vulnerable. But they had learned to lean on each other during those moments, to remind themselves that they were not alone. They also began to explore the idea of forgiveness, not for the people who had hurt them but for themselves. They realized that holding on to anger and guilt only kept them trapped in the past, and that true healing required letting go. As the years passed, Stacy and Mia continued to grow and evolve. Stacy's advocacy work expanded, and she became a leading voice in the fight against domestic violence. Mia pursued her passion for art, eventually earning a scholarship to a prestigious art school. They remained close, their bond unbreakable. They knew that their journeys were far from over, but they also knew that they had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. Stacy and Mia's story became a beacon of hope for countless others. Their blog grew into a thriving online community, and their advocacy work touched the lives of thousands. They were proof that even in the darkest of times, there was always a glimmer of light. Their legacy was one of resilience, compassion, and the unwavering belief that no one should have to face their darkest moments alone. As Stacy and Mia stood on the brink of a new chapter in their lives, they reflected on how far they had come. They had faced unimaginable pain, but they had also found unimaginable strength. They knew that their journeys were far from over, but they also knew that they had the power to shape their own futures. Together they stepped into the unknown, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. They were survivors, warriors, and friends, and nothing could ever take that away from them. The sun rose over Maplewood, casting a golden glow over the town. The streets were quiet, the houses still. But within the hearts of those who had been touched by Stacy and Mia's story, there was a sense of hope and renewal. The veil of shadows had been lifted, and the light shone brighter than ever before. Ethan Johnson was the quiet one in the family. At 12 years old, he had always been overshadowed by his older sister, Stacy, whose vibrant personality and artistic talent made her the center of attention. Ethan didn't mind, he preferred to stay in the background, observing the world from a safe distance. But when the family's carefully constructed facade began to crumble, Ethan found himself lost in the chaos. He had always looked up to his father, Anthony, despite the man's quiet and often distant demeanor. To Ethan, his father was a pillar of strength, someone who could fix anything with a few tools and a steady hand. But as Anthony's behavior grew more erratic, Ethan began to see cracks in that image. He didn't understand what was happening, but he knew something was wrong. When Stacy left home, Ethan felt like he had lost his anchor. He retreated further into himself, burying his emotions beneath a mask of indifference. He stopped talking to his friends, stopped playing soccer, stopped doing the things he once loved. He felt like a ghost, invisible and forgotten. Ethan blamed himself for what had happened to his family. He replayed the moments leading up to Stacy's departure in his mind, wondering if he could have done something to stop it. He remembered the nights he had spent hiding in his room, pretending not to hear the arguments downstairs. He remembered the times he had avoided his father's gaze, too afraid to ask what was wrong. The guilt ate away at him, leaving him feeling hollow and empty. He began to have nightmares, vivid and terrifying dreams where he was trapped in a dark, endless void. He would wake up drenched in sweat, his heart pounding in his chest, but he never told anyone about the dreams. He didn't want to burden his mother, who was already struggling to hold the family together. One night, after a particularly bad dream, Ethan snuck out of the house and wandered the empty streets of Maplewood. He didn't know where he was going, but he needed to escape the suffocating silence of his home. As he walked, he found himself standing outside Stacy's old school, the place where she had once been so full of life. He sat on the steps and cried, the weight of his guilt finally too much to bear. Ethan's mother, Brenda, had always been perceptive, and she noticed the changes in her son. She tried to talk to him to understand what was going on, but Ethan shut her out, just as he had shut out everyone else. Brenda knew she couldn't force him to open up, but she also knew she couldn't let him suffer in silence. One day, she suggested that Ethan join a local youth group for kids who had experienced trauma. At first, Ethan resisted, but Brenda persisted, gently encouraging him to give it a try. Reluctantly, Ethan agreed, though he had no intention of actually participating. The first meeting was awkward and uncomfortable. Ethan sat in the corner, arms crossed, refusing to make eye contact with anyone. But as the weeks passed, he began to relax. He listened to the other kids' stories, and for the first time he realized he wasn't alone. There were others who understood what he was going through, who had felt the same pain and guilt. Ethan's journey to healing was slow and uneven. There were days when he felt like he was making progress and days when he felt like he was back at square one. But with the support of the youth group and his mother, he began to find his footing. He started to open up about his feelings, first in small, hesitant steps and then with more confidence. He talked about his guilt, his anger, his fear. He talked about the nightmares that still haunted him. And slowly he began to let go of the weight he had been carrying for so long. He also reconnected with his love of soccer, joining a local team and rediscovering the joy of playing. The physical activity helped him channel his emotions, and the camaraderie of his teammates gave him a sense of belonging. As Ethan began to heal, he also began to rebuild his relationship with his family. He spent more time with his mother, helping her around the house and sharing meals together. He even reached out to Stacy, who had been a constant presence in his life despite the distance between them. Stacy was overjoyed to hear from her brother. She had always felt guilty for leaving him behind, and she was determined to make up for lost time. They began to talk regularly, sharing their experiences and supporting each other through the ups and downs of their respective journeys. Ethan also began to explore his own identity, separate from the shadow of his family's trauma. He discovered a passion for photography, using his camera to capture the beauty and complexity of the world around him. His photos were raw and unfiltered, a reflection of his own journey of healing. One of the hardest parts of Ethan's journey was learning to forgive himself. He had carried the weight of his guilt for so long that it had become a part of him. But with the help of his therapist and the support of his family, he began to let go of that burden. He also began to grapple with the idea of forgiving his father. It wasn't easy. Anthony's actions had caused so much pain, but Ethan realized that holding on to anger only kept him trapped in the past. He didn't forget what had happened, but he began to see his father as a flawed human being, someone who had been struggling with his own demons. Ethan's journey of healing inspired him to help others who were going through similar experiences. He began volunteering at the youth group, sharing his story and offering support to the younger kids. He also started a photography project, capturing the stories of survivors and using his art to raise awareness about the impact of trauma. His work caught the attention of a local nonprofit, which invited him to speak at a community event. Ethan was nervous, but he knew it was an opportunity to make a difference. He stood on the stage, his photos projected behind him, and shared his story with a room full of strangers. When he finished, the audience erupted into applause, and Ethan felt a sense of pride and accomplishment he had never known before. Ethan's story became a beacon of hope for others. His photography project grew into a traveling exhibit, and he began to receive invitations to speak at schools and community centers across the country. He used his platform to advocate for mental health awareness and to encourage others to seek help. He also continued to support his family, helping his mother rebuild their lives and maintaining a close relationship with Stacy. Together they became a symbol of resilience and hope, proof that even in the darkest of times, there was always a way forward. As Ethan stood on the brink of adulthood, he reflected on how far he had come. He had faced unimaginable pain, but he had also found unimaginable strength. He knew that his journey was far from over, but he also knew that he had the power to shape his own future. He looked forward to the possibilities that lay ahead, to new adventures, new challenges, and new opportunities to make a difference. He was no longer the quiet, forgotten son. He was Ethan Johnson, survivor, artist, and advocate. The sun rose over Maplewood, casting a golden glow over the town. The streets were quiet, the houses still. But within the hearts of those who had been touched by Ethan's story, there was a sense of hope and renewal. The veil of shadows had been lifted, and the light shone brighter than ever before. 10 years have passed since Stacy, Mia, and Ethan began their journeys of healing. Maplewood has changed. New houses have sprung up, the old oak trees have grown taller, and the scars of the past have faded but not disappeared. Stacy is now a renowned advocate for survivors of domestic violence. Mia is a celebrated artist, and Ethan is a photographer and mental health advocate. Together they have built lives filled with purpose and hope. But shadows from the past have a way of resurfacing. When a young girl named Lily moves to Maplewood with her family, she becomes entangled in a web of secrets and lies that eerily mirrors the struggles Stacy, Mia, and Ethan once faced. As the three friends are drawn back into the world they thought they had left behind, they must confront the lingering echoes of their own trauma while helping Lily navigate her own. Lily Carter is 14 years old, the same age Stacy was when her life fell apart. She's quiet, observant, and fiercely independent, with a love for writing and a knack for seeing the beauty in broken things. But beneath her calm exterior lies a storm of emotions: anger, fear, and a deep sense of loneliness. Lily's family has just moved to Maplewood, hoping for a fresh start after a tumultuous few years. Her father, Mark, is a recovering alcoholic who has been sober for 2 years, and her mother, Sarah, is a nurse who works long hours to support the family. Lily loves her parents, but she can't shake the feeling that something is wrong. When Lily starts at Maplewood High, she feels like an outsider. The other kids are friendly enough, but they don't understand her and she doesn't know how to let them in. She spends most of her time alone, writing in her journal and wandering the town, searching for something she can't quite name. One day, while exploring the town, Lily stumbles upon a small art gallery. The paintings are bold and vibrant, filled with emotion and energy. She's drawn to one in particular, a portrait of a young girl with shadows swirling around her. The girl's eyes are filled with pain, but there's also a glimmer of hope. The artist, Mia, notices Lily staring at the painting and strikes up a conversation. There's something about the girl that reminds Mia of herself at that age. Quiet, guarded, but with a spark of creativity. She invites Lily to come back anytime, and Lily, feeling a connection she can't explain, agrees. As Lily settles into her new life, she begins to notice cracks in her family's facade. Her father's sobriety is fragile, and her mother is distant and overworked. Lily tries to keep the peace, but the tension in the house is palpable. One night, after a particularly bad argument between her parents, Lily sneaks out of the house and finds herself at the art gallery. Mia is there working on a new piece and she invites Lily in. They talk for hours and for the first time in a long time, Lily feels seen. Mia recognizes the pain in Lily's eyes. It's the same pain she once saw in Stacy's and in her own reflection. She introduces Lily to Stacy and Ethan, who are immediately drawn to the girl. Together, the three friends begin to mentor Lily, offering her the support and guidance they once needed. But as they get closer to Lily, they begin to see parallels between her story and their own. They realize that the shadows of the past are not so easily left behind, and that the cycle of trauma can span generations. Lily's home life continues to deteriorate. Her father's sobriety slips, and her mother becomes increasingly withdrawn. Lily feels like she's drowning, but she doesn't know how to ask for help. One night, after a particularly violent argument, Lily runs to the art gallery, where Mia and Stacy are waiting. She breaks down, finally allowing herself to feel the weight of everything she's been carrying. Mia and Stacy hold her, offering the comfort and support she so desperately needs. As Stacy, Mia, and Ethan help Lily navigate her struggles, they are forced to confront their own unresolved trauma. They begin to see how their past have shaped their present, and how the cycle of trauma can be passed down through generations. They also begin to understand that healing is not a linear process. It's messy, complicated, and ongoing. They realize that in order to help Lily, they must first confront their own shadows. Stacy, Mia, and Ethan begin to work through their own trauma, seeking therapy and leaning on each other for support. They also begin to share their stories with Lily, showing her that she is not alone and that there is hope for a better future. Lily, inspired by their courage, begins to open up about her own struggles. She starts writing again, using her words to process her emotions and express the things she can't say out loud. With the support of Stacy, Mia, and Ethan, Lily begins to rebuild her life. She reconnects with her love of writing, joins a local youth group, and begins to make friends at school. She also begins to repair her relationship with her parents, who are inspired by her strength and resilience. Stacy, Mia, and Ethan, meanwhile, continue to advocate for survivors of trauma, using their own experiences to help others. They know that the road ahead will not be easy, but they also know that they have the strength to face whatever challenges come their way. One of the hardest parts of Lily's journey is learning to forgive her parents. She knows that their actions were not her fault, but she also knows that holding on to anger will only keep her trapped in the past. With the help of Stacy, Mia, and Ethan, she begins to let go of her anger and embrace forgiveness. She realizes that forgiveness is not about excusing the past, but about freeing herself from its hold. Lily, inspired by Stacy, Mia, and Ethan, decides to use her writing to help others. She starts a blog where she shares her story, her struggles, and her journey of healing. The blog quickly gains a following, and Lily begins to receive messages from people all over the world who have been inspired by her courage. Stacy, Mia, and Ethan, meanwhile, continue to advocate for survivors of trauma, using their own experiences to help others. They know that the road ahead will not be easy, but they also know that they have the strength to face whatever challenges come their way. The sun rises over Maplewood, casting a golden glow over the town. The streets are quiet, the houses still. But within the hearts of those who have been touched by Lily's story, there is a sense of hope and renewal. The veil of shadows has been lifted, and the light shines brighter than ever before. Thank you for joining me on this journey. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe for more tales of love, passion, and adventure.